defend and to take those balls because it was all about the attack. So well deserved. I enjoyed this guy.
He scored 0 goals at the 2026 World Cup. He didn't register a single assist, and when the tournament ended, FIFA handed him the golden ball for the best player in the entire competition, ahead of Kylian Mbappé, who scored 10 goals, ahead of Lionel Messi, who was chasing history at 39 years old. A defensive midfielder with nothing on the score sheet just beat the greatest player of his generation to the single biggest individual prize in football. And here's the part that makes this genuinely hard to believe. 14 months before that trophy was placed in his hands, this same man wasn't sure he'd ever play football again. September 2024. Rodri is on top of the world, literally. He has just won the Ballon d'Or, becoming the first Spanish-born player in history to win it. He's won 4 straight Premier League titles with Manchester City. He's just been named the best player at Euro 2024. He's gone 74 games unbeaten for club and country, a world record. By universal agreement, he is the best midfielder alive. 3 games into the new season, against Arsenal, he goes down clutching his knee. Ruptured ACL, torn meniscus, season over before it started. And the damage wasn't just personal. Without him, Manchester City, reigning 4-time champions, collapsed. They lost the league title to Arsenal. They finished the season without a single major trophy for the first time since 2017. One midfielder disappears, and an entire dynasty falls apart. That's how much this one player controlled the sport at its highest level. But here's what most people don't know about what came next. Because the comeback wasn't clean. It wasn't a highlight reel. By his own admission, it was hell. He rushed back for the 2025 Club World Cup that summer and got injured again, forced off in extra time. Then a hamstring problem, then groin trouble. Early in the following season, he limped out of a match against Brentford inside 20 minutes with the same knee still causing him pain. His manager had to handle him like he was made of glass. And Rodri has since admitted, in his own words, that there were points where he genuinely questioned whether he would ever play top-level football again. If you'd looked at the raw numbers through that entire period, you would not have found his name anywhere near a conversation about the best player on the planet. He was a shadow of himself, in and out of the team, injured, rushed back too early, injured again. The man who had touched the sky in October 2024 had, in his own description, plummeted straight into hell. So when the 2026 World Cup arrived, the honest question being asked about him wasn't how far can this man carry Spain. It was something much more uncomfortable. Is this even still the same player? To understand how far he'd already climbed before any of this happened, rewind further. Not a bad way to become European champion for the first time. That wasn't a one-off moment either. Across that Champions League campaign, he played 12 matches in 13, completed nearly 94% of his passes, and was named Player of the Season in Europe's biggest competition. 8 days later, he's on the pitch as Spain beat Croatia on penalties to win the Nations League, and he walks away with Player of the Final there too. 1 week, 2 different trophies, named the best player in both. By October 2024, when the Ballon d'Or was announced, his case was almost unavoidable. A 4th consecutive Premier League title with City, player of the tournament at Euro 2024, and by then the first defensive midfielder to win the award since Luka Modric. He beat Vinicius Jr., who had just inspired Real Madrid to the La Liga and Champions League double, to the biggest individual prize in the sport. It was controversial. Real Madrid reportedly skipped the ceremony once they learned Vinicius hadn't won, and the debate raged for months over whether a season of quiet control should outweigh a season of spectacular, match-deciding brilliance. That argument had barely settled before his knee gave out weeks later, and it would resurface again, louder and even more complicated, after this World Cup. Before we get to the answer, look at what his club season actually looked like, because this is the part that makes everything after it almost impossible to explain. 22 Premier League appearances, only 17 starts, just over 1,500 minutes for the entire season. Manchester City didn't even win the league. Arsenal ended a 22-year wait for the title, finishing 7 points clear, and City had to settle for second. This was not a dominant sweep-everything campaign. It was a careful, managed comeback, City's medical staff handling their most important midfielder like he was made of glass. There was a domestic cup double to show for it, the Carabao Cup, beating Arsenal themselves at Wembley, and the FA Cup, edging past Chelsea. But by the numbers alone, this was nowhere near a season that gets a player anywhere close to the conversation for best player in the world. And yet, even in that managed, rationed, rusty version of himself, something hadn't gone anywhere. Mid-rehab, still working his way back into rhythm, he was still winning the ball back more than any other central midfielder at his own club. The engine was still there. It just hadn't been allowed to run at full speed in 18 months. Then football packed its bags for North America, and the entire conversation flipped upside down. Spain arrived at the 2026 World Cup as European champions, unbeaten since Euro 2024, and Rodri was named captain. Not because his club form had been convincing anyone, because Spain trusted the player underneath the rust more than they trusted the results of the last 18 months. The group stage answered the doubts quietly, without a single moment that would make a highlight reel. Spain opened with a goalless draw against Cape Verde. Rodri played 87 minutes at 92% pass accuracy. Then a 4-0 win over Saudi Arabia, a full 90 minutes, 95% accuracy. Then a narrow 1-0 win away to Uruguay, 90 minutes, 94% accuracy. 3 games, 3 clean sheets. Spain didn't concede a single goal across the entire group stage, and there was nothing flashy about any of it. It was control, and control has always been Rodri's entire language. That's where the tournament turned from solid into historic. Spain rolled through the knockout bracket, and Rodri started and captained every single game. A 3-0 win over Austria, a 1-0 win over Portugal, a 2-1 win over Belgium. In every one of them, the pattern repeated. Spain didn't concede, and everything ran through their captain sitting in the middle of the pitch. Then came the semi-final against France, and this is the game that made the entire footballing world stop and reconsider him. Rodri won more duels by himself, 11, than the whole of France's midfield combined, who managed 7 between them. He completed 87% of his passes, made 4 tackles, and controlled the game so completely that Spain's own goalkeeper barely had a save to make all night. France possessed one of the most dangerous attacks on the planet. They were suffocated. Spain won 2-0 and walked into the final. Across the whole tournament, the defensive record building up in front of him was staggering. Over 8 matches, Spain conceded just 1 single goal. Teams simply could not play through the middle of the pitch, because the middle of the pitch belonged entirely to him. And here is where the argument stops being a feeling and becomes cold, hard fact. Across the entire 2026 World Cup, no player had more touches than Rodri, 794. No player completed more passes, 655. He had more line-breaking passes than anyone at the tournament, 106. He won the most duels, the most tackles, and recovered the most possessions of any player there, and then the record that puts this in the history books. FIFA confirmed Rodri completed 790 passes across this single World Cup, the most ever recorded by any player at a single tournament, breaking his own previous record of 638 from Qatar 2022, a mark he had taken from Xavi. The 2 most controlling passing tournaments in World Cup history both belong to the same man. And the second one came after a ruptured ACL that nearly ended his career. Then came the final, Spain versus Argentina, Rodri versus Messi, a 39-year-old Lionel Messi chasing a record-extending 3rd Golden Ball, one final coronation, against the Spanish captain who had clawed his way back from the edge of it all. Spain's plan was ruthless. Keep Messi at bay, keep the ball away from Argentina entirely. It worked to a frightening degree. Argentina managed 0 shot attempts across the entire match. Not just Messi, the whole team. An expected goals figure of 0.00. Messi finished the game with just 2 touches inside Spain's box the entire night. Rodri and Spain's midfield had simply strangled them. In his time on the pitch, Rodri completed 101 of his 105 passes, won 80% of his duels, and created 2 chances. Total control against the best that Argentina had. He didn't even see out the full match. With Spain pushing in extra time, he was substituted in the 99th minute, his job already done. By then, Argentina still hadn't managed a single shot. Ferran Torres scored the only goal of the game. Argentina, rattled, had Enzo Hernández sent off. And when the final whistle went, Spain were world champions for the 2nd time in their history. Then came the moment that framed everything that had happened over those 2 years. The Golden Ball, for the best player of the entire tournament, went to Rodri. He beat Lionel Messi to it. He became just the 11th man in history to win it as a pure defensive midfielder. 0 goals scored across the entire competition, named the best player at a World Cup, because his passing, his control, and his command of possession were the actual foundation everything else was built on. Look at what the other contenders actually did that summer, because it makes the decision even harder to explain away. Harry Kane scored 6 goals as England finished 3rd. Kylian Mbappé scored 10 goals in 8 matches, the Golden Boot, and became the all-time leading scorer in World Cup history. Messi produced 8 goals and 4 assists at 39 years old, dragging Argentina back to the final. Every one of them had a highlight reel. Rodri had 0 goals, 0 assists, and a stat sheet built entirely out of passes, tackles, and duels most casual fans would scroll straight past. And FIFA still ranked him above every single one of them. Afterwards, he spoke about the road that got him there. He said he never expected this, that he'd love for younger players watching to see that it's possible, that someone who touches the sky and then plummets straight into hell is still capable of rising again, that it's proof you have to believe, even when the evidence says you shouldn't. Most great players are measured in goals. Rodri is measured in everything else. The interceptions nobody claps for, the passes nobody notices, the tempo of an entire team living inside one man's decision-making. He doesn't score the goals that go viral, he makes sure they happen, and he makes sure the other team never scores one back. That's exactly why the injury mattered as much as it did. When Manchester City lost him, they didn't just lose a good player. They lost their compass, and an entire dynasty fell apart around the hole he left behind. When Spain have him, they become close to unbeatable. A World Cup final where the opponent didn't manage a single shot, with the best player alive at 39 years old completely neutralized. He will never be the name casual fans shout first. But when an entire Argentina team, with Lionel Messi on the pitch, fails to register a single shot in a World Cup final, that silence tells you exactly what he really is. World Cup Rodri isn't loud, he isn't a firework. He's something quieter, and in its own way, far scarier. total control. And right now, less than 2 years after doctors cut open his knee and told him the road back would be brutal, he's the best player in the world all over again.